Hey guys, it's Friday afternoon here in Manila, and I'm going to go ahead and kick off our free-for-all weekend. And as before, I told you I didn't really know what I was going to do, but I came up with a great idea because I haven't showed you guys many of my Top Fuel Dragsters. I don't have a really big collection, like 10 or so, so I figured I would go ahead and show them to you and give you a little background on Top Fuel because I am a big drag racing fan and I do have a little bit of knowledge about the history of the car's evolution, but the drivers, I guess you could say, lost some of my knowledge over the years because I haven't really been staying into it. The last time I really followed drag racing was through the 90s. I was a big John Force fan for Top Fuel Funny Cars. But anyways, kind of lost touch of it after that. Just kind of know a few things here and there, watch some races on television. And to be honest with you, nowadays I don't even know who is who. So, kind of like NASCAR. Used to be a big NASCAR fan up until probably 2005, and then kind of lost touch with it too. So, don't even really know who's driving and racing anymore. But I can enlighten you on the cars and the evolution of the cars, the history of the cars in the motorsport, and so on. Plus, also give you guys a look at some great castings. I have a few different cars here today, and it will show you different stages of Top Fuel from the start in the mid-50s all the way up until today. And then we have cars from Hot Wheels, 100%. We have Johnny Lightning, Action, and also Autoworld. Autoworld is actually touching in the NHRA area in 164th. They've always done stuff in 118th, like old vintage funny cars and stuff like that. But this 164 stuff is new to me. It just, I think, was released in about 2000, maybe 17, 2018 is when they started doing this. And we don't get many of them here in the Philippines, unfortunately. So I don't know what is out there. I've got a couple of them, though, to show you guys from the 2016 season. So I think they were available to us back in 2017, something like that. So anyways, let's get started. So the oldest one I got here is to kind of represent pretty much what a car in the late 50s would have looked like, mid to late 50s. Like Big Daddy Don Garlett is like the godfather of drag racing. He started racing in the 50s, actually in 1950, then started becoming pretty popular during the mid 50s with Swamp Rat 1. And Swamp Rat's what he called his cars because he was from Florida and such. So with the swamps and stuff, I guess that's why he nicknamed them Swamp Rat. Don't know the whole history behind the name either. But this car here is actually from Tommy Ivo. They called him Tommy TV Ivo. I guess he was a celebrity on television, and he also raced, and he basically traveled around the country with Don Garlits and stuff during the 50s and 60s, so they ran together. This is one of his early cars, and you could see it's front engine dragster, and it's a very short wheelbase too, not like these ones that I have here. The wheelbase is much longer, and this orange one is also from Tommy Ivo. Both of these are his. This would be like the one that he was running. To be honest with you, I don't know when he entered in NHRA or in the drag racing period and started hanging out with Don Garlits. I don't know if he started when Garlits did or later on. But anyways, this gives you an idea of what a car would look like in the late 50s. I know Tommy Ivo, this was like maybe in the early 60s. Could be the late 50s, though. I know he had some stuff, and it's like 64, so I know he was racing back then. But anyways, this is to kind of show you the evolution of these cars. How they learned that stretching the wheelbase made them handle a little better. They weren't so squirrely and all over the track like that. So they stretched the wheelbase, and that's where we got these guys here. But when drag racing first started, they just took like a car with a full ladder frame and started removing parts to lighten them up and run these cars. So it was something that wasn't out of the ordinary in the 50s to see just a frame with an engine and a seat. So that's when Don Garlits kind of perfected the Swamp Rat 1 and came up with a certain design that a lot of people followed with. So that's where this came in. And this is a really cool car. This came from Hot Wheels. This is a Hot Wheels 100% car, and this came in the oil can series. So very nicely detailed car with the bicycle spoke front wheels, the like ET slot style 5-spoke wheels in the back, and gives you a really good look and representation of what a very early first-gen dragster would look like. So, once again, Tommy Ivo, and I kind of already told you a little bit about this car. This is, I think, his like 1964, maybe even like 1968 car he ran. This one's very famous because he had a really cool like transporter that he had this on and a Corvette on in some commercials and some promotions. So I think this was like it would have been when the C3 Vet became available. So maybe like 1968 this car was out there on the circuit. And anyways, you can see how the wheelbase is a little bit longer. Still the same design, the front engine and the driver sits behind the engine, obviously if it's front engine and so on, but just a longer wheelbase to help it handle a little better. So then we also have a couple of other cars. This one is the Benny Osborne Racing front engine dragster, and this was like a privately owned racing company. I don't think they had a lot of sponsorship behind them, but a lot of guys in the 60s didn't. This car is from like 1968 era, probably the same time this Tommy Ivo car. You probably would have seen these cars like racing against each other back then on the racing circuit because they both were campaigned the same year. So I'm not sure about the history of this guy, Benny Osborne, but he was the owner and driver of this car, I believe. So this is also a pretty cool car. These cars come from Johnny Lightning's Top Fuel Legends. Johnny Lightning did a really great job in the late 90s with Racing Legends series. They had Top Fuel Legends, Stock Car Legends, and Funny Car Legends. And you guys have seen me unbox quite a few of them in the past. You may have even seen me unbox some of these guys, actually. But anyways, that's the guys that were racing in the late 60s. That's what the car was represented as. Much longer wheelbase than your first gen. So I would call this like the second generation of Top Fuel. Then there's this guy here, which is Kreitz and Donovan. Donovan is a popular name when it comes to racing engines. Mainly in like pro mod, pro stock type of things. They did engines, or still do make engines, I think, based on like big block Chevys and such things like that. Now, that's one thing in drag racing. Most of these Top Fuel cars were modeled after the Hemi. All of these cars would have been running the first generation Hemi. Now, these, actually, the second generation Top Fuel cars may have started using the 426, the second gen style Hemi. But anyways, this is another one of the guys that was campaigning back in the late 60s. I think this one is from 69. And these are really cool series from Johnny Lightning, because here I'll show you like how I got this information. Is here with the cards, they show you an actual picture of the car, the racing team, and the driver's name. So you got this guy here, and I'll show you the other card later on. Then there's the Benny Osborne, sorry. But the Tommy TV Ivo, I couldn't find a card, but I'm familiar with that car. So it's some of them I am familiar with. These guys, though, this Benny Osborne and the Steve Carbone that drove the one for Kreitz and Donovan, not familiar with these guys at all. So, but as I said, the names of the drivers not so good with, but the cars I am. So back in like the late 60s, they were campaigning these cars. And then in 1970, in actually March 1970, Big Daddy Don Garlitz had a very bad accident. Actually, it wasn't even an accident. It was a mishap, a transmission explosion. The transmission exploded and blew the car in half. Actually, the transmission, and you had a short drive shaft here going to the rear end, but I'm not even sure if it had a drive shaft. It may have been like direct drive. The tranny could have been plugged right into the rear end, but the transmission exploded and it actually blew the car in half right here and tipped the whole, I guess you would call this cabin or cockpit, whatever you want to call it, flipped it upwards. It actually blew off half of his right foot during that accident. So when he was laid up in the hospital, he came up with the idea of the rear engine dragster. Other guys had tried it previously, I think, in the late 60s, but none of them were successful. Well, he came up with a design that ended up being successful for him, where he actually won the Winter Nationals in 1971. So after that happened, everybody followed suit and started racing rear-engine dragsters. So 1970 was the last year that you would have seen front-engine dragsters widely campaigned. Nowadays you will see them, but they're just like nostalgia races and such. But yeah, that basically phased out the front-engine dragsters after Big Daddy's accident or incident, and then after he came up with that design. So then we had the 70s, which had tons of different front or rear engine dragsters. There were all kinds of different concepts, and that was the other card I had here I was going to show you. This Keeling and Clayton. Rick Ramsey was the driver. And you see how these front wheels are encased. And here's the car from Johnny Lightning. Once again, Top Fuel Legends, which they did a spectacular job representing this car. So it looks really cool. And then this car, I think, was campaigned in 1973, I believe. And it's really cool looking car. Just is something that isn't part of like the NHRA heritage. And anyways, you also may recall, and I wish I had these cars to show you, was the Snake and Mongoose wedge cars. They were campaigned probably in 72 to 74, somewhere in there. If you remember, they were kind of like a wedge style car. The back part of them, it was hard to even describe them, but they were all enclosed. The rear tires were kind of enclosed and stuff, and it was like a big wedge here. So it was very different. But as I said, you've seen all kinds of crazy stuff in the 70s. Even through the 80s, there was some crazy stuff, and we'll get into that in a moment. But yeah, through the 70s, just anything and everything took place. You've seen some really crazy dragsters. Now, in the 80s, people started getting slightly more conservative. Not much. Even Big Daddy was still toying around with different concepts and stuff with front spoilers, rear spoilers. I know he had one that had like a almost vertical front spoiler. It was like, I don't know, it looked like a ram on the front of this vehicle or on the front of this dragster. So I don't even remember what issue of Swamp Rat that was. But anyways, let's go to the next one I have. This car is a car that was campaigned in the late 90s. But this is an event car. This came from the Gator Nationals in 1997. This is your event car from Action Racing Collectibles. They did a really good job on this car. It's all metal, so this thing's actually quite heavy. The Hot Wheels is also all metal body, but it's small, so it's light. And then these Johnny Lightnings are partially plastic and metal. I think some of the bodies are kind of like resin, and then the chassis is metal. But this guy is all metal chassis and metal body, and it, as I said, quite heavy. But anyways, this is your traditional car that you would see throughout the 90s. Pretty much after 1989, this became the setup. But through the 80s Actually, in 1986, the Swamp Rat, I think it was Swamp Rat 29, had a body that looked like a snake. And the front tires were kind of enclosed, but you could see the wheel. It was nothing like the Keeling and Clayton with the whole wheel enclosed. This one actually looked like a snake head. And in 1986 is when Big Daddy actually went to an enclosed canopy because he had another mishap, but I don't think it caused an accident, where a bug hit his helmet, and I think it cracked the screen or something, or the face shield, and it really scared him. And he was wondering, like, what if this would have been a bird or something like that? What would have happened? It could have killed me. So anyways, he enclosed the whole canopy, and he ran that from 86 all the way through the late 80s. And he had that, I call it like a snake. It looked like a snake head on the front of the car with the enclosure on the wheels. And then, like, through the late 80s, people ran, like, really small diameter front wheels to the point where they looked like riding lawnmower wheels and tires. They looked ridiculous. Some guys, like Big Daddy, ran, like, flush-mounted, like, moon caps on their wheels. I don't think they were moon caps, but that's what they resembled, to kind of keep any kind of resistance or drag that goes with the airflow inside the wheels. They wanted it to be kind of like streamlined. But I guess through all of this work, they found out it was not any faster whatsoever. So they went back to this style, the basically conservative 80s, and then ran this through the 90s. And with the taller wing, the bigger diameter wheels, even nowadays the wheels are even a bigger diameter. Not much, but a little bit. And anyways, we move on to our, I would say, like, during the 70s, you can't even say like generation, but I would say like in the 70s, anything you've seen would be like your third generation. Even during the 80s, like the 70s and 80s was a mixed bag of stuff, so that would be like your third generation of Top Fuel. This, I would say, is your fourth gen. Now, as of 2012, Don Schumacher brought out a new vehicle, well, new concept, but not really new. As I said, Big Daddy Don Garlits did this in the 80s, late 80s. So really nothing new, but NHRA has some really tight restrictions now because these cars are so fast. And like with Scott Coletta getting killed in 2008, that's when they dropped the quarter mile to 1,000 feet because they felt the cars were getting too much speed and they were way too dangerous and way too hard to stop. So they dropped the 1320 down to 1,000 feet. So then they had some really strict restrictions. And that's why Don Schumacher wanted this just mainly for driver safety, not any kind of aerodynamic advantage and things like that. But anyways, I know Larry Dixon had criticized him about, like, if it does give any kind of advantage with aerodynamics, then I'll run one, but until then, I won't run this canopy. But anyways, Don Schumacher tried to get it to where he could run it in 2012, and he did in some of the races. It actually would turn out to be a success. He did win the championship in 2012 with Anton Brown, and then Anton Brown also won it in 2015 and 2016. This is one of Schumacher's cars. This is Leigh Pritchett's car, the girl that races for him. This is one from, as I said, 2016 with the Mopar sponsorship with Papa John's and so on. And as you could see, now these things look like drag boats. And once again, you can see the bigger diameter on the front wheels now. So basically, same thing as what we've seen in the 90s, except now they found out the diameter of the front wheel doesn't really matter. And then the canopy, I can't say if it gives an advantage or not. I don't know. I don't know if it's been proven yet or not. It may have, but not sure. But I think predominantly everybody is running them now, but I cannot say that either because I haven't really watched drag racing for maybe 3 or 4 years. But this would be considered like your 5th generation. So we have Gen 1, Gen 2, and then, as I said, Gen 3, which would be this, the wedge dragsters of Snake and Mongoose, and whatever other crazy contraption you've seen in the 70s. Then 4th gen would be this guy, which was the 90s. Then this is your 5th gen, which would have been pretty much from 2012 on up. So this would have been like 1992, 93, all the way to, say, 2012. Now, this is your 2016 champion car of Anton Brown. And this Toyota, yes, it says Toyota on it, but no, it's not powered by Toyota. Some people are asking this, and no, it's not. Even the funny cars that you've seen being campaigned in the 90s that had Toyota on them, they were not Toyota powered. They are all still based on Chrysler's Hemi engine. They are a 500 cubic inch, 11,000 horsepower engine. Yes, 11,000 horsepower engine that burns 15 gallons of nitromethane in one pass. So these cars get a quarter mile, or actually nowadays 1,000 feet per 15 gallons. So do the kind of concept there, think of that, wrap your mind around that. So it's crazy. These cars are so loud that you can feel your lungs literally like vibrating in your chest. If you have not been fortunate enough to see these cars run, you need to. It's an experience that is like no other. These cars have more force and more noise than all 43 NASCARs coming around the track at once, and you're standing right by the fence. It's nothing compared to the Top Fuel cars making a pass. These cars go 320 some miles per hour, maybe even 330 miles per hour now. It's very high 3-second passes, so it's ridiculous how fast these things are. But yeah, it's intense to see these cars run in person. But this is where we stand nowadays with your Top Fuel. That's what they look like. So after 5 generations, this is where we are now. And I don't see how they can get any faster. They may, but it's kind of scary to even think about it. These guys have more G's being pulled on them than a guy in a fighter jet. So it's just extremely intense. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it. These cars, the 2 last ones, are from Autoworld. And this is why I said Autoworld did a heck of a job. And actually, I wish I could find one. They actually make ultra reds of these, which is cool. The body's red. The tires were white. Very cool looking. And the engine, I think, is white too. I would love to get my hands on one of them. Just to have in my collection, because I am a big vintage racing fan and big drag racing fan, but as I said, I don't really follow a lot anymore. But yeah, these are my dragsters. I think I have 1, maybe 2 other ones, but these are predominantly everything. And yeah, actually I do have one more that I was going to unbox with you guys, and that is this one. This is Drag Strip Demons. And this one's a little bit nicer than the Johnny Lightning Top Fuel Legends. Although these are cool, but the one from Hot Wheels is a little bit more realistic, I would say. Let me get this out so we can take a look at it together. And as I said, this one is just a little bit better with the details than the Johnny Lightning. Johnny Lightning's still cool, don't get me wrong, but this, it's kind of a little more realistic with the front wheels, the bicycle spokes, because that's predominantly what they ran in the late 60s, even like on the cards. Of the ones that I do have here, you can see that that's like a bicycle spoke style. That's more of a solid, but and then there's bicycle spokes, and some of these were literally bicycle spoke wheels. So that's pretty much what they ran in the 60s with these type of wheels. And if they did run something else, very, very narrow tire like a motorcycle. These are a little bit too fat on the Johnny Lightnings, and then the track is a little bit too narrow. So these from Hot Wheels are much more accurate. The engine also on the Johnnies are a little bit overscaled. This one's pretty much perfect. So then if you were comparing, this would be your second generation with more detail, and this is your first generation. And really second and first, the only difference would be the wheelbase. That would be about it. And then this car was the BB and Mulligan front engine dragster, and it's a very cool car. They made a few of them in the drag strip Demons. The other one, I know the name of the car was the Zipper. Then they had, I think there was one more besides the BB and Mulligan and the Zipper. And then also, as I said, they had the Wedge dragsters from Snake and Mongoose, which were really cool. So I still want to get my hands on some of this other stuff from the Drag Strip Demons series. They had a lot of cool stuff in that series, which was debuted in 2009, and they had a set in 2010 also. So those cars are really, really cool. So now this is everything, guys. I almost forgot about the Drag Strip Demons. Sorry about that. So this is your kind of brief history lesson on Top Fuel and like the things that evolved throughout the 60s and 70s and then 80s and 90s and today. So I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something. And as I said, all of these brands I highly suggest. Action makes a lot of more very cool pieces too of like actual drivers, cars, and such. They have some really cool, funny cars and things too. So they do a heck of a job with the racing collectibles. So I would highly suggest their stuff. But the Autoworlds are not too shabby either. So guys, I'm probably going to not be able to do a bonus video this week, but Monday we'll be taking a look at some Hot Wheels muscle cars. Just a variety of new stuff and old stuff, but they'll all be Hot Wheels premium cars, so we'll take a look at them on Monday. So guys, if you have not subscribed yet, please remember to do so. Please give me a thumbs up, share the video if you liked it, and then I will see you guys on Monday. So have a great weekend, and thanks for watching.